A maid's daughter risked everything. Her scholarship, her mother's job, and their only home, just to save a bleeding boy abandoned on the locker room floor. What she didn't know was that the charity case she was protecting was actually the secret son of a billionaire, and that helping him would cost her everything. The locker room was quiet, way too quiet. The metallic scent of fresh blood hung in the air, heavier than the humid mix of sweat and cologne. A boy lay crumpled on the cold tile, ignored by the wealthy students who had stepped over him like he was a piece of trash left on the ground. For Emily Carter, stepping into the boys' locker room wasn't just rule-breaking, it was a suspension guaranteed. Or worse, children of staff did not get second chances, and one wrong move would see her life at Oak Creek Academy shatter. But when she heard that low, broken groan, raw pain, not theatrics, all caution vanished. It was a rainy November afternoon at Oak Creek, the elite academy where rich families dropped off their kids in luxury cars. Emily, 17, pale-haired and quiet, wasn't one of them. She waited on a bench outside the locker room with her history notes, staying invisible as always. Her mother, Linda, was the school's head custodian, and Emily was there on a fragile staff scholarship that could be taken away at the slightest complaint. "Keep your head down, eyes open," she murmured. Her grandfather Frank's old mantra. He'd raised her with the discipline of a combat medic. Though gone 2 years now, his voice lived in her mind. Then came the crash, metal tile, a sickening thud. Emily froze. Laughter echoed from far down the hall, but none of them noticed, or cared. She hesitated only a second before pushing through the heavy doors. Inside, the locker room was damp and echoing. In the far corner, half hidden behind toppled benches, lay a boy. His uniform blazer was torn, dirt smeared across his ribs, blood soaked his dark hair. Emily ran to him. "Hey, can you hear me?" No response. His breathing was shallow and panicked. Blood pooled around his ear. She recognized him. The new kid, quiet, ate alone, always looked like his clothes had belonged to someone else first. Students whispered he was a tax write-off foster kid, and therefore an easy target. She used her cardigan as a pillow for his head, then pressed her clean gym shirt onto the gash on his forehead. "You are going into shock," she muttered with calm precision. "Stay with me." His eyelids fluttered open, soft gray eyes clouded with fear. Then, footsteps. Emily tensed. "Well, look at this." Brad Henderson, the golden boy of Oak Creek, football captain, son of the vice principal, and the school's most polished bully, 2 teammates trailed behind him, grinning. The janitor's daughter, and the stray. Brad chuckled. "Cute. He is bleeding, Brad," Emily said, pressing harder on the wound. "Call the nurse. She's gone. And my dad doesn't want 9/11 calls on campus," Brad said with a smirk. "Bad for our reputation." "He has a concussion," Emily snapped. "Broken ribs? Maybe internal bleeding. He needs a hospital," Brad snorted. "I'm not touching him, and you shouldn't even be in here. Girls get suspended for less." The boy curled on the tile groaned, terrified. He grasped Emily's wrist, as if she was the last lifeline he had. Emily glared at Brad. "I don't care about your rules. I care about him not dying." Brad's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing. No one talked back to him, especially not Emily, the girl who faded into the background of every hallway. "Fine," Brad said coldly, "but don't say I didn't warn you." He walked out, leaving behind the bloodied body of a boy like a discarded toy. As soon as they were gone, Emily turned back to him. "What's your name?" "Michael," he whispered. "I'm Emily, and I'm getting you out of here." She pulled out her small first aid kit, something Grandpa Frank insisted. She cleaned the wound, taped the gauze, checked his pupils. "Okay," she said. "We're moving on 3. She slid her arm under his shoulders. 1, 2, 3. They stood. Michael leaned heavily against her, barely conscious. She half carried him toward the door. But just as they reached the hallway, the locker room doors opened again. This time, it wasn't Brad walking through the locker room doors. It was his father, Vice Principal Henderson, tall, imposing, the tie perfectly straight, face carved from stone. His cold gaze swept over the scene, Emily dripping in sweat and rain, trying to hold up a bleeding boy who could barely stand. "Miss Carter," Henderson said, his voice low and dangerous, "would you care to explain why you are dragging a student down the hallway after hours looking like you've been in a street fight?" "He's hurt, sir," Emily said, trying to keep Michael upright. "Brad and his fry. Enough." He cut her off with a raised hand. "I will not entertain baseless accusations against exemplary students," he said sharply. "I see a boy who probably lost a fight he started, and a girl who has violated multiple school policies by entering restricted areas." Emily clenched her jaw. "He needs a hospital. He is bleeding. He is dizzy. He needs a shower and some discipline, Henderson snapped, looking at Michael with undisguised disdain. Then he turned back to Emily. You have disappointed me. This school functions because of order. You are creating disorder. Helping someone isn't disorder. Emily shot back before she could stop herself. Henderson's eyes narrowed like knife edges. Your mother's job is hanging by a thread, he said in a quiet voice. And your scholarship? Even thinner, leave the boy? Security will escort him out. You will find your mother, go home, and if you go near him again, you won't be returning here on Monday. Michael swallowed, trying to stand on his own to protect her. Go, he whispered faintly. I'll be all right. She looked at him, the blood seeping through the gauze she had carefully placed, the fear behind his eyes, and she made her choice. I am taking him to the hospital, she said firmly. You can expel me Monday tonight. I am doing the right thing. She strode past Henderson, pulling Michael after her. Henderson was so astonished that he didn't budge. His face went a furious crimson. You've made a grave mistake, Miss Carter, he shouted after her. Emily didn't look back. Outside, the rain was hammering down. Linda Carter's old station wagon waited at the curb. When Linda jumped out and saw the blood, her face drained of color. Emily, oh my God, what happened? Open the door, Mom. We need to get to St. Jude's now. They loaded Michael into the back seat, Emily climbing in beside him, pressing a fresh towel to his head as the car sped through the storm. Michael stared back, trying to keep himself conscious. Why, he whispered, you are losing everything. Emily stared out into the storm, the school disappearing behind them into darkness. You are not trash, Michael, she said softly, and I am not going to let them treat you like you are. As Michael fought the heaviness pulling him toward unconsciousness, his hand slipped into his pocket. He touched the smooth, hidden phone, his direct line to a world Emily didn't know existed. If he used it, everything would change. He wasn't ready, not yet. Mais il fait, oni promesse muette. If he lived through tonight, Emily Carter would never have to worry about money or scholarships again. The drive blurred. Rain streaked windows, the battered rhythm of windshield wipers, the suffocating tension. She gripped the steering wheel as if it was all that kept them alive. She didn't yell. She didn't question. That silence was worse. Emily kept pressure on Michael's wound in the back seat, the towel warm and heavy with blood. Stay awake, she whispered. Talk to me. Anything. Michael forced a weak smile. I like your car. Smells like vanilla. It smells like cleaning supplies and old seat cushions, Emily said with a tired laugh. Mom buys vanilla air fresheners to cover the bleach. Says she doesn't want to bring work home, but the smell follows her anyway. He studied her face in the passing streetlights. Exhausted, fierce, determined. You're in trouble, he muttered. I am always in trouble, she said, shrugging. Usually for reading in the hallway or wearing the wrong socks. Saving a life is a better reason than most. Linda spoke from the front seat, voice trembling. Emily, Henderson called 3 times. I didn't answer, but we both know what that voicemail says. He can't fire you for helping someone, Emily insisted weakly. He'll find a way, Linda said. That job is the only thing keeping the lights on. The car jolted over a pothole, Michael groaned. Let's worry about the lights later, Emily whispered. Right now, we need a doctor. Chaos greeted them at St. Jude's, crying children, coughing elderly, exhausted families. None of the velvet chairs or hushed waiting rooms Michael was accustomed to. Linda rushed for a wheelchair, and together they eased him into it. The nurse at the intake desk barely looked up. Name? Insurance? Emily looked at Michael. Was he covered by any insurance? Yes, more than anyone in this building, but using it would reveal his true identity. No insurance. Michael Miller. His mother's maiden name, the nurse sighed. Sit and wait. He has a head injury and lost consciousness, Emily insisted. He needs a CT scan. Now. The nurse, apparently startled by her use of medical terminology, looked closer at Michael. Trauma 2. Take him through the double doors. Emily guided him to a curtained bay. She helped him onto the narrow hospital bed. You know a lot of big words, Michael whispered. My grandpa made me memorize the combat medic manual when I was 12, Emily said, checking his pulse. He said, competence is your only shield. He sounds intense. He was the best man I ever knew. In came a young doctor. He did some quick exam and said, concussion, bruised ribs, 3 stitches. You are lucky. As he numbed the wound, Emily instinctively took Michael's hand. He squeezed back, focusing only on her. So, Michael said through gritted teeth, what does Emily Carter do when she's not rescuing stray kids from the floor? She studies, works weekends, and wants to be a trauma surgeon. You are already saving people, he murmured. Once the procedure was completed, the doctor provided instructions. He needs someone to wake him every 2 hours. He can't go home, Linda interjected. He lives alone. Emily looked at Michael. Is that true? Guilt flickered across his features, but he nodded. Yeah, just me. Linda stared at him, bruised, bleeding alone, and then at her daughter's desperate, pleading eyes. She let out a long, defeated sigh. Fine, he can sleep on the couch, but I am calling social services in the morning if we can't reach his father. Thanks, Mom, Emily whispered. By the time they left the hospital, the storm had passed. But nothing else in their lives would ever be the same again. The Carters lived in a worn apartment complex on the south side of town, the kind of place where the elevator had been, out of order longer than anyone could remember, and the neighbors knew each other's secrets through the paper-thin walls. They climbed 3 flights of creaking stairs and stepped into their tiny unit. It was small, modest, but spotless. Books were stacked neatly in every corner. In the living room, Grandpa Frank's old armchair sat like a throne, faded and threadbare, but commanding respect. Linda put fresh sheets on the couch. Here, she said gently, handing Michael a pair of oversized gray sweatpants that had belonged to Frank. They'll be huge, but they're clean. Michael nodded gratefully and slipped into the bathroom to change. As he was out, Emily brewed tea in that small kitchen. Linda sat at the dinette table, her shaking hands holding on to her cell phone. She wasn't scrolling, wasn't talking. She stared at the screen as if it were a bomb about to go off. Mom? Emily set a warm mug of chamomile tea before her. Did he call again? Linda nodded. She didn't lift her eyes. He sent a text. Emily steeled herself. Do not report tomorrow. Your final check will be mailed. Your daughter is barred from campus pending an expulsion hearing. The room was absolutely quiet. Even the old refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. Emily felt her stomach drop. Expulsion. Death sentence. Not just for her, but for her mother, too. For what? Emily whispered. Helping someone? For treating a bleeding kid like a human being? For insubordination, Linda whispered. For causing trouble, for whatever he decides. He is the vice principal. Emily, he doesn't need proof. We're nobodies. Her voice cracked. I have $80 in the bank. Rent is due Tuesday. Emily sank into a chair. The adrenaline had been drained out of her hours ago, leaving a cold, paralyzing dread. She knew she'd done the right thing. But the cost. Dear God, the cost was brutal. I'll take extra shifts at the diner, she said quickly. I can work nights. We can appeal the expulsion, talk to the board, the school board. Linda let out a broken laugh. They're all Henderson's golf buddies. We lost. Emily, we tried to play their game, and we lost. Michael stood frozen in the hallway, in his baggy sweatpants and stained shirt. He couldn't help overhearing everything. He'd caused this. Their despair clung to the walls like smoke. He looked around the small apartment. Modest, almost poor, but full of love. Photographs on the wall, Emily and Linda laughing. A picture of an older man in uniform saluting. The grandfather Emily adored. This was a home full of sacrifice and goodness. His home, by contrast, was sterile, silent, polished, staffed by people who smiled because they were paid to. Michael slipped quietly into the bathroom and locked the door, sitting on the edge of the tub. He pulled out his phone 4% battery. When he turned it on, several dozen notifications blew up onto the screen, calls from his dad, messages from the security team, alerts from the headmaster. He ignored all of it. He opened his banking app. The number staring back at him could buy this entire building twice. But he couldn't just give them money. It would have raised questions, exposed who he was, ruined everything. He had to be strategic, careful, invisible. He opened his messages and typed to a contact saved only as Arthur. His father's personal fixer, the one man Michael trusted. Michael Fay Arthur, Ream safe. Do not track this phone. I need you to fix a situation at Oak Creek Academy immediately. Vice Principal Henderson fired a staff member, Linda Carter, and expelled her daughter, Emily. This is a mistake. Fix everything. Anonymous donor scholarship grant. Reinstate them with a raise and a formal apology. Do not reveal this came from me. If you do, I disappear. I mean it. Click send. 3 seconds later, Arthur. Understood. Michael, are you hurt? Your father is ready to tear this city apart. Michael, I am cool. Just handle Henderson and Arthur. Look into the scholarship fund. I want it fully endowed forever. Arthur, consider it done. Please come home. Michael turned the phone off and gazed at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The bandage on his forehead glowed stark white. He wasn't just the nameless charity case anymore. He was a witness, a catalyst. He unlocked the door and stepped out. Emily and Linda sat in heavy silence. I am sorry, Michael said softly. Emily shook her head. It's not your fault. I know, he said carefully, but sometimes things turn around. He managed a faint smile. My grandpa used to say, the darkest hour is just before the dawn. Linda snorted weakly. Your grandpa was an optimist. Now get some sleep, Michael. We'll figure out where you go in the morning. Emily stood. I'll get you a glass of water. He followed her to the doorway of the kitchen. Why did you really do it? He asked, his voice low. You knew the risk. You knew Henderson. Emily filled the glass, then turned to face him. Because you were hurting, she said simply, and everyone else walked past you. I couldn't be one of those people. I don't want to live in a world where we just look away. Their fingers brushed as she handed him the glass. Thank you, Michael whispered, for seeing me. You are welcome, Michael Miller, she teased softly. He watched her disappear into her room. Then he lay on the couch. There was a water stain in the corner of the ceiling. The radiator clanked. The blanket had the faint scent of lavender, of detergent. It was the best night's sleep he'd ever had. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, and Emily was jolted awake, her confusion replaced by dread, expulsion. Her future gone, she hurried into the living room and froze. The couch blanket was folded into a perfect military square, the pillow neatly fluffed. Michael was gone. Mom, Emily called. He's not here. Linda, in her robe, hurried out. Is he sick? Number just gone. They found a napkin on the kitchen table, neat handwriting, cursive Emily and Linda. You have to go take care of some family issues. I can't stay and cause more trouble. Thank you for saving my life. I won't ever forget it. Linda sagged into a chair. So that's it. We lost everything for a boy who didn't even say goodbye. He was scared, Mom, Emily persisted, even as her chest burned. He didn't want to be a burden. We still have bigger problems, Linda said grimly. I have to start calling temp agencies. Then, ring. The landline, the number only the school and debt collectors used. Linda let out a bitter sigh, probably Henderson wanting the uniforms back. She picked up. Hello, Emily watched her mother's face change, her eyes widen, her jaw drop. I don't understand, Linda stammered. Yes, I'm listening, wait. Say that again. What? Emily stepped closer. Mom, who is it? Linda waved frantically for silence. Yes, of course. We'll be there in an hour. Thank you. Thank you so much. She hung up flabbergasted. That was the chairman of the school board, Linda whispered. Mr. Abernathy, Emily blinked. The chairman, why would he call you? He said there was a significant administrative error. Emily's breath caught. He said Vice Principal Henderson has been placed on immediate administrative leave, pending an investigation into misconduct. Emily's jaw dropped. There's more, Linda continued, her voice shaking. An anonymous benefactor contacted the school. They've endowed a staff excellence grant. My job is secure. They want to promote me to facilities manager with a raise. Emily's eyes welled up in disbelief. And your expulsion? Linda asked, her voice cracking. Withdrawn, completely erased. And Emily, your scholarship. Emily leaned in. They upgraded it. Full ride, tuition, books, meals, and Linda swallowed hard. They guaranteed 4 years of college support if you stay at Oak Creek. Emily had to hold onto a chair to steady herself. How? She whispered. Why, it hasn't even been 12 hours. The chairman said the benefactor was very specific. Linda says, they saw an act of integrity they believed embodied the school's values. Emily looked at the empty couch. The napkin. The neat cursive. I won't forget it. No, Emily murmured. It couldn't be him. He didn't have insurance. His clothes didn't fit. He's scared of his dad. It just doesn't fit. Then who? Linda whispered. Maybe a teacher saw Henderson yelling. Maybe someone reported him. Maybe, Emily forced a breath. Maybe justice exists after all. Linda wiped her eyes. We have a meeting in an hour. Go get dressed. Wear the good uniform. While ironing her shirt, her mind was preoccupied with Michael, the way he squeezed her hand, the way he looked at her, the way he vanished. She felt relief, but confusion too. Pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit, but for now, they'd survived. Monday morning dawned bright and deceptively calm at Oak Creek Academy. Emily climbed the steps, her backpack over her shoulder, her breath misting in the cold air. But she felt different, grounded, steady. The school couldn't shake her for the first time in her life, it seemed inside. The hallways had an unusual tension humming through them. Conversations stopped when she passed. Students whispered, eyes darting. Henderson's office door was dark, nameplate gone. Rumors floated like smoke, embezzlements, scandal, board takeover. Nobody even imagined that the avalanche was started by the daughter of a janitor. Emily arrived at her locker. 12, Fay 24, Fay 05. Her grandfather's homecoming date. She exchanged books, as whispered conversations fluttered about. I heard he was fired. My dad said something about a corporate audit. She shut the locker and froze down the hall. Brad Henderson stood at the trophy case. Small, shrunken, his swagger gone. His Letterman jacket nowhere to be found. He stared at his phone, pale and anxious. He met Emily's eyes for a moment. There, instead of anger, was fear. A chill did slither up Emily's spine. Michael's note boomed inside her head. I need to attend to some family business. Suddenly, a deep vibrating rumble shook the floor. Not thunder, engines, big ones. Students rushed to the windows. They came up the winding driveway in 4 black SUVs, sleek, armored, and tinted, surrounding a silver sedan more costly than the school's science lab. With military precision, the vehicles glided to a stop. Whatever was about to happen next, it wasn't going to be small. Uniformed security officers spilled out of the SUVs, and these weren't the bored mall cops Oak Creek usually hired. These men moved with a quiet, almost shadow, like grace in tailored suits, their earpieces coiled behind their necks, their carriage straight, alert, and unmistakably trained. Their jackets bulged faintly at the points where shoulder holsters hid beneath the fabric. They eyed the entrance onto campus with the cool detachment of professionals who had spent years guarding high-value targets. Then, the back door of the silver sedan opened. A wave of gasps swept through the hall. A boy stepped out. He was wearing the standard Oak Creek uniform, but elevated. His navy blazer was hand-stitched Italian wool, his shirt crisp, his shoes polished to a mirrored shine. Every movement carried grace, control, and the quiet authority of someone raised with power. He turned, and the sun struck his face. Michael, except. Not the Michael Emily had dragged bleeding across a tile floor, not the trembling boy wearing her grandfather's sweatpants, not the quiet nobody drinking chamomile tea in her kitchen. This was Michael Sterling, the same sharp jawline, the same storm-gray eyes. Everything else, however, had changed. He moved as if he were a prince reclaiming his throne. The only hint of last week's violence was a small, flesh-colored bandage on his forehead, like a jewel of the battle he'd survived. No way, whispered a girl beside Emily. Is that the charity kid? That's not a charity kid, said a boy, his voice shaking. That crest on the car, Sterling. His dad is Richard Sterling. The hallway exploded. The Sterlings weren't just rich, they were dynastic. Their companies controlled the ports, the tech infrastructure, and half the land in the county. Their last name dictated elections. Emily stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat. Shock and betrayal warred within her. He had lied. About everything, the truck driver, the poverty, the helplessness. He wasn't one of the invisible ones. He was the king of the visible ones. Michael didn't even glance at the staring students plastered against the windows. He merely buttoned his blazer and mounted the front steps. His security team followed him out, but kept a discreet distance. The bell rang, no one moved. Suddenly, everyone was rushing to the main hallway, a living corridor of whispers and cell phones. The big double doors swung open, but Emily did not move a step farther. Michael entered, and the hallway fell dead silent. He strode down the center like a blade through clean water, the crowd instinctively, reverently parting around him. His face showed nothing. He wasn't here for them. Brad Henderson was still standing near the trophy case, pale and shaking. The swagger was gone, replaced with wide-eyed panic. Michael stopped right in front of him. His security detail stopped behind him, hands folded neatly. Brad swallowed. "Michael, I didn't know, Mr. Henderson," Michael said calmly. The voice was unrecognizable. Smooth, powerful, and cold enough to burn. "I trust your father received the severance package prepared by my lawyers." Brad nodded rapidly. "Good," Michael went on. "The terms were generous, far more than he is entitled to. He is barred from holding any position in education in this state, effective immediately." Brad's knees wobbled. Michael stepped closer. "You have a choice," he said quietly. "Finish your senior year here quietly and respectfully, or leave today. But if you ever mistake cruelty for strength again, I promise you, the only team you will ever captain is a prison work crew. Is that clear?" "Yes," Brad whispered. "Yes, sir." "Excellent." Michael casually pulled on his cuffs. "Get to class." Brad fled, nearly tripping over himself. In less than a minute, the entire hierarchy of Oak Creek Academy had been demolished and rebuilt. Michael turned for an instant. The steel mask slipped, and something human flickered in his eyes. He was looking. He found her. Emily stood rigid beside her locker, holding her book tightly to her chest. She didn't look impressed. She looked hurt. Michael walked towards her. The crowd held its breath. The billionaire heir, the janitor's daughter face to face. He stopped 3 feet away, respecting the boundary between them. "You lied." Emily's voice was soft, but the silent hall carried it like a shout. "I omitted the truth," Michael replied gently. "There's a difference. Not to me," Emily shot back. "You let me think you were alone. You let my mom worry about feeding you. You let us risk everything when you could have bought the hospital." Michael held her stare, never wavering. "If I'd told you who I was, would you have helped me?" he said quietly. "Or would you have judged the name and assumed I deserved what happened?" Emily opened her mouth, but froze, because deep down he was right. She hated the rich kids around here, their entitlement, their cruelty. She had her own blind spots, her own prejudices. "I needed to know," Michael said. "I needed to know if anyone here had a soul." His voice cracked faintly. "I found one person," he whispered. "Only one." Emily's eyes burned. "You played with us," she said, her voice shaking. "My mom cried over that expulsion notice. And I made it right," Michael said firmly. "I fixed everything. Your mother is safe. Your future is secure. I pay my debts, Emily." "It wasn't a transaction," she snapped. "I didn't save you for a scholarship. I saved you because you were bleeding, because no one else would. You don't get to fix fear with money." She turned and walked away. The girl in the second-hand uniform had walked out on the air to a kingdom, and the entire school watched in stunned silence. Michael didn't budge. He didn't chase. He merely nodded once to the security chief standing beside him. "Let her go," he murmured. Arthur frowned. "Sir, the headmaster is waiting." "Then the headmaster will have to wait," Michael said quietly, eyes fixed toward the hall where Emily vanished. "It is not forgiveness I can purchase. It is something I will have to earn." Later in the day, Emily sat in chemistry, staring at a beaker, trying and failing to focus. The whole school buzzed with gossip, most of it about her. Girls complimented her hair. Boys that never glanced her way nodded politely. It made her sick. They didn't care about her. They were concerned about whom she had spoken to. She was mid-equation when a voice interrupted. "Is this seat taken?" She didn't look up. "Go away, Michael." He sat down anyway, setting his leather bag down neatly beside the stool. The teacher looked up, saw who it was, and looked away. Nobody told a Sterling where to sit. "I'm not here to buy you off," Michael said quietly. He opened a brand new textbook. "Then why are you here?" "Because this is my chemistry period," he said deadpan. "And because you deserve an explanation." Emily snorted. "Explain what? That you're a billionaire who cosplayed as a foster kid?" Michael didn't rise to the bait. "My father has enemies," he said quietly. "Real ones, kidnapping threats, data theft, financial extortion. I've grown up behind walls and tinted glass." Emily stopped writing. "So this year, I convinced him to let me attend a normal school. Just for 1 year. I used my mother's last name. I wore plain clothes. I wanted to be invisible." "How'd that go?" she muttered. "It turns out," he said with a humorless smile, "being poor makes you invisible in a very different way." Emily's chest tightened. "Brad targeted you because he thought you were weak," she said. "Yes, and I let him," Michael admitted, "because if I fought back my cover would be exposed, so I took it every hit." He looked at her. "Until Friday that night, I thought I was going to die on that floor, and then you walked in." Emily swallowed. "You risked everything for nobody?" he whispered. "And it was the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen." "I was just doing what was right," Emily muttered. "Grandpa Frank would haunt me if I hadn't." "Your grandfather raised a warrior," Michael said softly. Then he reached inside his blazer and set a small velvet box on the table. Emily stiffened. "I told you, I don't want your money." "It's not money," said Michael. "Open it." Emily shied away and raised the lid. Inside was a tarnished silver-purple heart on a faded ribbon. Emily gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. "Where? How did you?" "I had my team locate your grandfather's records," Michael said. "He sold this medal in 1998 to pay for your grandmother's surgery." Emily's eyes welled. It was sitting in a pawn shop in Seattle. He met her eyes. Steady, sincere. "I bought it back for you." Emily's hands shook as she picked the medal up. She knew the story, because although Frank never said a word about selling it, she knew it had broken him. "Michael," she whispered. "No strings attached," he said softly. "Just, thank you." Tears slid down her cheeks. "You are still a liar," she whispered, wiping her eyes. "I know," Michael murmured. "I'm working on it." Around them, the entire class was faking, not listening in. "And you are attracting attention," Emily said. "Let them look." Michael's eyes hardened. "They should know exactly where I stand." "And where is that?" she whispered. Michael looked closer. "Right here," he said, "next to the only person who matters." The bell rang. He stood, lifting his bag. "My father's flying in tonight. He wants to meet you." Emily's stomach dropped. "Richard Sterling? He wants to meet me?" "He wants to thank the girl who saved his son," said Michael, "and also the woman who yelled at the chairman of the board." His lips twitched. "Apparently your mother is terrifying on the phone." Emily let out a startled laugh. "She is." "I'll pick you up at 7, Michael said. "Wear something nice. Not because you need to impress him. Trust me, no one can. But because we're going to Lucille, the impossible to get, into Italian place." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that a request or a command?" "A plea," he said truthfully. "Please, let me take you to dinner. Just Michael and Emily." She gazed at the medal in her hand. She looked at him, the boy fighting to bridge the distance separating their worlds. "Okay," she said softly. 7. "But if you wear a tie, I am leaving." Michael grinned for the first time that day. A real one. Deal. He walked out. Emily stared at her grandfather's medal, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with the complicated boy walking back into her life. That night, Lucille stood like a glass jewel atop the highest skyscraper in town, and the rise of the private elevator was so smooth that it felt like gliding into another atmosphere. Emily stood beside Michael in the brass, paneled lift, in a plain black dress she'd once worn to a funeral and a cardigan that had been pressed to perfection. She felt small, not from the height, but from the pressure. Michael noticed. He didn't take her hand. There were cameras, but he edged his body gently to block her from the reflective walls. "He is going to test you," Michael whispered. "He tests everyone, board members, rivals, even chefs. Don't try to impress him. Just be the girl who stood up to Brad Henderson." "I didn't stand up to Brad," Emily said under her breath. "I just told him the truth." "Exactly." The elevator doors slid open. Lucille hummed with low conversation, crystal glass tapping, and the murmur of dinner meetings that shifted the city's fortunes. The maitre d' didn't ask for a reservation. He bowed. A deep bow. He led them to a corner table overlooking the glittering skyline. A man sat waiting. He didn't look up as they approached. A tablet in hand, sparkling water untouched, suit immaculate, Richard Sterling. When finally he lifted his gaze, There was no mistaking the similarity. Michael's storm-gray eyes came from this man, but Richard's were colder, sharper steel instead of weather. "Father," Michael said, "this is Emily Carter." Richard didn't stand. He pointed only at the empty chair. "Sit." Emily sat, back straight, eyes forward. She remembered what had once said, "When you sit with a general, don't bow your head. You are not a soldier, you are a citizen." "The calamari is very good here," Richard said, opening his menu with surgical precision. Emily swallowed. The real test had begun. Richard didn't immediately look up. He merely scanned the menu, then said flatly, "The calamari is excellent here, but I assume you've never had it." A test, a class marker, a reminder of the distance between their worlds. Emily did not bat an eyelid. "I am allergic to shellfish," she said matter-of-factly, lying. She wasn't. But she refused to let him order for her. "I'll take the roasted chicken." Richard paused. For the first time, something flickered behind his icy eyes. "Practical," he said. "I like practical." He handed the menus to the waiter without looking at him, then leaned forward, threading his fingers together. "So, Miss Carter, you're the young woman who dragged my son through a hallway." "I dragged a patient to safety," Emily replied matter-of-factly. Who he was didn't matter at the time. Richard's eyebrow lifted. Didn't it? He didn't raise his voice, but the weight of his tone pressed on her chest. "You're a scholarship student," he continued. "Your mother worked, custodial jobs. You live in a neighborhood my security team labels a red zone. And yet, you expect me to believe you saw a boy in an expensive uniform, and you didn't see an opportunity?" Michael opened his mouth. "Quiet, Michael." The command cracked like a whip. "I am speaking to Emily." Richard's cold, calculating stare locked onto her. "The world is transactional, Miss Carter. Everyone wants something. You saved him, and now you have a scholarship upgrade. Your mother has a promotion, and you're dining in one of the most exclusive restaurants in this city. That is a remarkable return for 20 minutes of work." In other words, the implication was unambiguous. He was calling her a mercenary. Emily felt heat rise. Not shame, but righteous fury. She didn't break eye contact as she opened her purse, pulled out the velvet box Michael had given her, and removed the tarnished purple heart. She placed it gently on the pristine white tablecloth. The metal looked almost violent against all the elegance. "Do you know what this is, Mr. Sterling?" Richard looked at it. Expression neutral, but his fingers twitched. "A Purple Heart, Korean War era." "It belonged to my grandfather," Emily said in a steady voice. "He earned it crawling into a mortar crater in Faye to save a man he didn't know. He came home with shrapnel in his leg and pain that lasted the rest of his life. He didn't get a scholarship. He didn't get a promotion. He got a limp. And this Faye, she pushed the metal an inch closer to him. He taught me you help people because they're human beings, not because they're investments." Her voice sharpened. "I didn't know Michael was a Sterling. I didn't care. He was bleeding, scared. And he was alone, because the people you pay to protect him cared more about optics than safety." Silence thickened around the table. Even waiters slowed, as if afraid to disturb the air. Emily raised her chin. "If you think I did it for money, you can take the scholarship back. You can fire my mother. We survived before you. We'll survive after you. But don't you dare insult the one thing I have that you can't buy." The room held its breath. Michael stared at her in awe, and with a flicker of fear. Nobody spoke to Richard Sterling that way. Nobody. Richard studied her for a long moment. Then, a real smile spread over his face. Not the predatory grin of a businessman. Something warmer, respectful. "Faye," he muttered. "My father served in Faye, the Faith Infantry." Emily blinked. Grandpa was in the Faith. Richard nodded. He picked up the Purple Heart with surprising reverence. "Then it is entirely possible your grandfather knew mine, a beat, or saved him." He handed the medal back with care, as if handing over a relic. Then, quietly, "I'm so sorry." Emily froze. I'm sorry what?" Richard leaned back. "I said, I'm sorry. I had to try. My son has been surrounded by sharks his entire life. I needed to know if you were another shark, or whether you were the water." He signaled the waiter. "Bring the vintage Cabernet and chicken for all of us." He looked at Michael and said, his voice with a rare softness, "You chose well." The rest of the meal felt unreal. The interrogation was over. Richard asked about Emily's studies, her mother's work ethic, her goals. He didn't speak to her like a charity case. He spoke to her like someone whose opinion mattered. When dessert arrived, a sculpture of chocolate too elegant to touch, Richard straightened his jacket. "There's one final matter," Michael tensed. "Henderson? Taken care of?" Richard said with a flick of his hand. "But the system that enabled him, that is the real problem, and I do not tolerate problems." He reached into his inner pocket and slid a document towards Emily. She frowned. "What is this?" "A deed of trust," Richard replied. "As of this morning, Oak Creek Academy is under new management. I purchased the controlling interest in the school. The board has been dissolved." Emily's eyes widened. "You bought the school." "I like to control my environment," he said simply, "but I am a very busy man, and I cannot run a high school. I need somebody who understands the cracks, who actually cares about the foundation, not just the FEA'd. He tapped the paper. "The new director of campus operations, effective immediately, is Linda Carter." Emily's breath caught. "You are making my mother the boss." "I am making your mother the guardian," Richard corrected. "She has spent a decade cleaning up messes. It is about time she got the authority to stop them." Then he turned to Emily. "As for you, your scholarship requires a summer internship. I am in charge of clinics in developing countries and have to evaluate these clinics for needs, allocations, and repairs. Your skill set is uniquely suited." Emily swallowed hard. "I'd love that, really." "Good," Richard said, standing. "I have a plane for London in an hour, Michael. Drive her home. And slowly. It is raining." He left without another word, but as he entered the elevator, Emily noticed him touch his lapel, as if checking for a medal that wasn't there. The sterling sedan glided through rain-soaked streets, the headlights smearing across the wet pavement like watercolor. This time, Michael didn't sit behind the partition. He remained beside her. "You were unbelievable," he said softly. "I thought he was going to pass out when you dropped the medal on the table." Emily let out the breath she'd been holding. "I was terrified." A laugh escaped her. "But honestly, the worst he could do was expel me again." Michael laughed. Warm, honest, he took her hand. His grip was firm, grounding safe. When it stopped in front of her apartment building, the same peeling paint, the same flickering lamp. It felt somehow different. Not a trap. A starting point, Michael walked her to the awning to shield her from the rain. "So," Emily said, "see you in chemistry tomorrow?" Michael winced. "Actually, I might be switching to biology. Mrs. Gable scares me." "She terrifies everyone," Emily smirked. "Stay. I'll tutor you." Michael let out a breath of relief. "I was hoping you'd say that." He did not leave straight away. He just looked at her, as if memorizing her in this soft pool of streetlight and rain. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, a silent promise. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not walking by." Emily held his gaze. "I never will." "See you tomorrow, Emily." "See you tomorrow, Michael." She watched the sedan disappear into the rainy night. Then she went upstairs, lighter than she had felt in years. Inside, her mother was sitting at the table, clutching a hand. Delivered contract. "Mom?" Emily asked. She looked up then, eyes red but smiling like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Did you know?" she whispered, holding up the contract. Emily hugged her. "I had a hunch." They stood there in their small kitchen, the world still full of storms, still full of broken things, but no longer hopeless. Emily's gaze went to the photo of Grandpa Frank. She touched the frame. "Head up, Grandpa," she whispered. "Head up." And that, right there, is where Emily's chapter closes for now. No matter where you are, whether you are winding down for the night, sipping tea, or finding respite from a long day, I hope that her journey gave you a moment to breathe. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I read every single one. Hit the like button, subscribe, and drop your feedback below for more stories like this. We always try to make each story better than the last.